Good morning, this is Hugh LaFollette. Welcome to Ideas and Issues. On our program this week, I'll be talking to Professor John Hardwig, Chairman of the Department of Philosophy at East Tennessee State University, and our topic will be the duty to die. This show is part of a two-part series on the topic, the duty to die. In this show, Professor Hardwig will explain his views on the question. In the next show, Nat Hentoff, the syndicated columnist, will respond to Professor Hardwig much in the way that he did during the recent debate on the ETSU campus. Professor Hardwig has argued in written work that individuals under certain circumstances might have a duty to die, and that idea is undoubtedly very foreign to many people and perhaps morally repugnant. The attempt in this show is to have him to explain that view. Unfortunately, the first minute of the program was lost due to technical difficulties. So I'll begin by phrasing the question I put to Professor Hardwig during the interview and the beginning of his answer, of his first answer. Professor Hardwig, we want to explain exactly what you mean by the duty to die, and in particular the circumstances under which such a duty might arise. Professor Hardwig responded that a duty to die, what he meant by a duty to die, was a self-understood, self-imposed, and self-enforced duty, a duty to die that might arise under particular circumstances because of certain obligations to the individual's family. And what he is trying to do in the first question is to explain the nature of the obligations to the family and the circumstances under which an individual might actually have a duty to die. He begins by citing the circumstances, in particular, the responsibilities we have to our loved ones. These responsibilities arise primarily because of two circumstances, one concerning finances, the second concerning the obligation to care.
Imposed on families by a serious or chronic illness, and the second have to do with caregiving burdens. Okay, the first one, in the debate, I used the following example. An 85-year-old woman dying of congestive heart failure. She was alert, assertive, very much wanted to live. Her doctors gave her only a 50% chance to live 6 more months, but she beat the odds and lived 2 more years before she died. Her doctors, focusing only on this woman and her health, consider this a tremendous medical success. But think about what does this treatment mean to her family. Her family, in this case, consisted of only one daughter, 55 years old, and this daughter cared for her mother. But before her mother died, this woman, the younger woman, her daughter, had lost her job, her career, her house, and all of her savings. So that shows you what kind of burdens, financial burdens, families can be put on. The daughter's future, her whole future, has been radically altered by her mother's illness. She does not have time to recoup her savings. Her retirement plans have been devastated. She's going to have to start all over again with a different job and a different line of work, so on. The rest of her life has been affected. Okay, the other kind of case comes up when family members require extensive caregiving, and especially over long periods of time. Perhaps the classic case there is Alzheimer's. Caregivers, when they have no relief, when they are single caregivers, sole caregivers, are just devastated. They essentially have no life of their own. They have no time to have a life of their own, no energy to have a life of their own. This kind of caregiving can take 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. These people become exhausted. Friendships disappear as they have no time to devote to their friends. Life plans are disrupted. Not surprisingly, these people lose all hope. They often lose all sense of who they are. They become profoundly depressed, and in the end, even their health is compromised.
Okay.
Now, you could add a third category if you want, and that has to do with not just the caregiver himself or herself, but what that means for the rest of the family. So you imagine a family, and the mother, it's usually a woman who delivers the care, and the mother in the family is spending all of her time taking care of her seriously ill father. That means her children are neglected, and they grow up essentially without the care of their mother. So though the children don't provide care, they are burdened too by the care that's given.
Okay. So those would be the circumstances under which someone might think they have a duty to die. Now, in giving your argument for the duty to die, you talk about two primary points of the argument. I wonder if you could briefly explain what those 2 points are, and then we'll go back and look at each of them in turn.
Okay, the first has to do with the way our medical technology is changing death. It used to be just 50 years ago, prior to World War II, before there were effective widespread antibiotics and respirators were not yet in wide use, people who got seriously enough ill so that they were bedridden would, before too long, develop a pneumonia usually. And since the pneumonia could not be effectively treated, these people died within a short period of time. What's happened is we have come a long, long way in treating serious illnesses and in staving off death. But the very success of those treatments gives us a whole new series of problems, ethical problems and social problems, as we can prolong the lives of seriously, seriously ill people for longer and longer periods of time.
Okay, so in essence, we're facing moral problems we just didn't face in the past.
That's right, and those moral problems are the result of the successes of our medical technology. We're all very, very glad that people don't drop dead of heart attacks the way they used to. We're very glad that people don't die of pneumonia every time they get sick for a month. We're very glad that AIDS can be treated longer, and so on. But these successful treatments have moral costs and emotional costs.
And so you're certainly not opposed to the treatments.
Oh no,
you're simply saying it creates new problems we didn't have before.
And in that sense, we're all victims to the medical technology, because it gives us choices we didn't have before. And so our moral situation is changed by the technology we've created. But it's great technology. We're all glad to have it. We're all glad that we don't face death by pneumonia as soon as we get seriously ill. I know I am.
Okay. So changes in technology create new moral questions. Now, there's a second element of your argument which you take to be especially important in how we ought to think about the new problems that we now face. Could you explain what that is?
And that is, my basic vision is that we are connected to others. And when we think about death, when we have thought about death and dying and illness, we've thought about that as if the only person affected were the person who were sick, the person who is dying. Whose life is it anyway? We ask rhetorically. And the answer to that question is it's only the life of the patient that counts here. And that's that focus on the individual, separated from her connections to others, has given rise to a bioethics of autonomy. Let the patient decide. After all, it's her life, it's her body, it's her health, it's her life. But that's too simple, because we are connected. Because we are connected, the treatment decisions that are made for and on behalf of chronically ill people or dying people often affect the lives not only of them, but of their loved ones and family. So if you go back to the example of the woman, the example we started with, the example of the woman with congestive heart failure, if you look not just at the moment where she's dying, but you look at her whole life versus her daughter's whole life, the daughter's life was clearly more affected as a whole than the dying mother's life was. So it isn't even true that my illness and death affects me more than it affects the lives of my loved ones and family.
Could you fill that out? You said that, take it what you had in mind was that the prolonging of the 85-year-old woman's life for 2 years did affect her life, but the extent and the quality of the way in which it affected it was not as great as extent and the quality of the way in which it negatively impacted the daughter. Is that correct?
That's correct. Think about it in terms of burdens, if you will, and which burdens are heavier, which burdens you would most hope to avoid. Now, no question about it, the 85-year-old mother got 2 extra years that she might not have had. And although she was seriously ill and she ended up bedridden and on oxygen and so on, those were years that she wanted. She thought her quality of life was okay, was worth the candle. The game was worth the candle. However, when you compare the two, which is worse, to lose a 50% chance of 6 more months of life, or even to lose 2 more years of life at age 85, or to lose your job, your career, your home, and all your savings at age 55. Now, if we ask ourselves, which is the greater burden? Which is the burden that we really hope we don't face in life? If we have to face one of those two, I think the choice for most people is obvious. I'd rather forego 2 years at age 85 than to lose my job, my career, my home, and all my savings at age 55. I think almost all of us would make that choice.
Okay. Now, in this, the explanation you just gave almost helps explain why it seems to me to go a bit beyond just the claim that we're connected. That it helps explain why I, as an individual, might be rationally more concerned to make sure that I don't face the complete loss of all my savings, the complete loss of my career, etc., at the age of 55, than I would be to ensure that I could prolong my life for 2 years at the age of 85. But I take it